we all know that aging is socially constructed. Okay, I know why, sorry. Okay, if you go to your ebook, aging or the process itself or the different stages of aging are socially constructed. I think you can download this file, aging is socially constructed.pdf from the week 12 module. Can you find the file from your gadget? It's in week 12 module, right? Okay, and we are going to see how. This I got from this website. It tells us the retirement age in different countries. So people have their justifications, their rationales, their logics attached to why they define certain age as retirement age. Some countries, the retirement age is 62, some is 65, some is more than that. The policymakers in those countries, they attach different logics reasoning behind why they designate certain age as retirement age. So this tells us that aging is socially constructed. Are we clear? Okay. And it has been agreed upon by researchers, policymakers in different countries. Super centenarians are people living up to 110 years or more. And centenarians are people living to be 100 years or more. So these two definitions further indicates that aging is socially constructed. We have our own rationale and logic. Why those 110 and over should be called super centenarians and those 100 and above should be called centenarians. And not only so, in the US, the policymakers and researchers also agree that those between 65 and 74 are classified as the young old. Those 75 to 84 are classified as the middle old, and those 85 and older are classified as the old. Social construction of aging is also manifested in this kind of classification. Are we clear? And different countries have something, a formula they call dependency ratio. Dependency ratio is formulated in this manner. It means how many non-working age population or dependents has to be supported by the working age population. So the numerator would be the dependents. In some country is 0 to 17. In some country is 0 to 18. In some countries is 0 to 15, the very young. Those, the youth or the teenagers who still cannot work in most countries, and the elderly. So, how many dependents needs to be supported by those who can work? That's the dependency ratio. It's another manifestation of social construction of aging. And I got this formula from here. You can check if you want to. Any questions so far? I think I'm done with the first part of the chapter on aging. I forgot which one. Okay. Now let's move on. We are still on the same chapter on aging. So, there are different definitions associated with the process of aging. Some view aging as a status. Some view aging as a process. It's like a cutoff point. 65, you have to retire. If people think from this mindset, they view aging as a status. And some view how the biological factors, our genetic makeups, our phenotypes, our biomarkers, our molecular and our cellular within our system, how they gradually change over time as we progress from adulthood to old age. If people have this mindset, they view aging as a process. The changes in biological factors over time, they don't occur all of a sudden. We call that primary aging, right? So, the creation of the notion primary and secondary aging can imply that some people, they view aging as a process, not a status. And I forgot to mention one thing. Even in some countries, they have retirement age. For men and women, they differ. Usually women, their retirement age is set a few years younger than men. And they have the rationale saying that maybe women marry up, their husbands are older than them. So they both can retire at the same time. They both can go do things after retirement at the same time. If we define women's retirement age a few years younger than men. And another rationale, in some countries that tend to be more patriarchal, is that women still bear the bulk of child rearing or household chores responsibilities. And because of that, maybe they continue to do that. Maybe they are quote unquote expected to take care of their grandkids when they become grandmothers. And because of that, certain policymakers in certain countries define women's retirement age a few years younger than men. So this shows that aging, whether it's viewed as a status or as a process, is socially constructed. The meaning of aging is socially constructed. Maybe during the days of our great grandparents, they don't have something, a life stage called aging. They don't have a process called aging. They just went on with life naturally. And at some point, maybe policymakers designate certain age as retirement age. Can you see that aging is socially constructed? And people also go through secondary aging. And if they have been physically inactive, sedentary, or they have been having poor diet throughout their life, they are going to see certain changes as they progress through different lifespan and life stage. It's going to manifest itself increasingly as one progresses from childhood to teenage years to adulthood to old age. So, there are two processes associated with aging. And this is the meaning of gerontology. It's essentially the process of aging. And this concept, gerontology, focuses on challenges faced by the elderly. And social gerontology is a subfield under gerontology. Social gerontology focuses on the social aspects associated with the aging process. And you will always see this when you read the newspaper, or now the newspaper is online too, or in the social media, or sometimes when you listen to the news on TV or from your laptop, you will hear this word, life expectancy. Do you know the meaning of life expectancy?
long someone is able to live?
Yeah, very good. So, how long a person is expected to live after a given age? So, when we say life expectancy, it means how long a person is expected to live after the person is being born. If we say life expectancy at 20, it means how many more years on average a person is expected to live. A person with a certain characteristics, like maybe the Gen Z, like your generation. If we say life expectancy at 20 for Gen Z, it means on average how many more years Gen Zs are expected to live after age 20. So if the life expectancy at 20 for Gen Z is 80, it means on average Gen Zs are expected to live until 100 in a given country. Are we clear? Or in any given location. So this is what we mean by life expectancy. And research has been done over the past decades, a long time ago, that sometimes in certain countries, African countries, sometimes AIDS or HIV can affect people's life expectancy. And it remains to be seen how or whether the coronavirus is going to affect people's life expectancy. And because people from different age groups have different immunity, so life expectancy for people in different age groups is going to differ, or people from different generations. Life expectancy for Gen X like myself is going to be different from life expectancy for your generation. Are we clear? And life course is just the life events from birth to death. Life course, you hear that quite often too. And the life events from birth to death can include maybe birth ceremonies, different birthdays, or birthdays for specific ages in some cultures, and kindergarten graduation, elementary school graduations, all kinds of graduations, college graduations, marriage, having the birth of a kid, promotions, you name it, and funerals at the end. This is what we mean by life course. Are we clear? And baby boomers, they are the largest generation in the US. And now they enter the old age, and some enter the retirement phase. So, elderly, I'm sure you see on the news quite often these days. Everybody, policymakers or public health professionals, all these live stream by Vice President Pence or some other sources, sometimes they will mention that the elderly have weaker immune system. They may be more vulnerable to coronavirus. So again, this remains to be seen. How the baby boomers are going to be affected by the virus is still early. And everybody is keeping watch while having all the equipments, all the masks, all the soaps ready to fulfill people's needs in society, including the elderly needs. Are we clear? Question? And these are the challenges faced by the elderly people. This is what we mean by gerontology. Gerontology studies the challenges faced by the elderly people. Poverty. After people retire, they transition into self-employment or they transition into other flex hour work. Sometimes all these new job opportunities may or may not come with benefits and they are less stable. So, many people, especially after retirement or when they are near retirement, sometimes for some reason, sometimes due to no fault of their own, their jobs were being terminated prior to retirement age. All these people, sometimes they can face a decrease in standard of living if they are living on social security income. We know it's never sufficient. And maybe they no longer have a stable paycheck and other factors. So, poverty is a very common challenge faced among elderly in all countries, not only in your countries. Elderly people in some countries, like many Asian countries, like Singapore, Malaysia, or Japan, my ex-student told me, the retirement system or the pension system works differently. The money we put in is the same money we get back plus interest. It works differently, the pension schemes in this country. So regardless of how the pension schemes works in this country, in my humble opinion, regardless of how the pension schemes work in any country, if that person maybe had a low ranking job due to certain disadvantages, maybe family upbringing, education attainment, and whatnot, and that person's contribution to the pension scheme is going to be less. The interest earned will be less. The interest accumulated plus principal will be less over time. And when the person hits retirement age, the person may realize what's safe in the retirement scheme when the person is qualified to withdraw all money invested in the retirement scheme. And the person may realize, in addition to his or her own savings and what's invested, quote unquote, in the retirement scheme, is still not enough to sustain their lifestyle in old age, even if they live frugally. And because of that, the elderly in Singapore, there are many videos on YouTube. The elderly in other countries, the elderly in the US, they continue to work past retirement age. If they can, they remain in their jobs. And if they can, they take a lesser pay job. Sometimes these jobs do not come with benefits or whatnot. They are less stable, they are not permanent. So poverty is a big problem among the elderly. And elderly in many countries also face a problem called ageism. And ageism means age-based discrimination. The elderly sometimes, they are discriminated based on their age. Sometimes by employers, sometimes by other entities, sometimes in the public. People have certain stereotypes attached to older adults. This is what we mean by ageism. And in America, as well as in other countries, now the youth culture, I'm sure you know what I mean, the youth culture gain prominence in many countries. And this is going to challenge gerontocracy. Gerontocracy means older adults in a given society has a high social status, and some of them hold prominent positions. With the advent of youth culture in many countries, the notion of gerontocracy is being challenged. And this is a manifestation of ageism. Are we clear? And elderly face all kinds of mistreatments and abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, emotional. They are also being neglected. And sometimes they face financial abuse. Maybe other people control their finances after a certain age. Or they are being abused because they refuse to help out financially to younger members of their family. Because of that, they face financial abuse. And sometimes elderly, due to all kinds of reasons, they decide to self-neglect. Maybe they are depressed or something, their kids are far away from them, and due to other reasons, they self-neglect. These are the challenges faced by the elderly in many countries. Are we clear? And the three theoretical perspectives view aging from different angles. Functionalism says that those with more resources will be better adjusted in their old age. It's a no-brainer. And there are many sub-theories or mid-range theories under the grand functionalism theory. The disengagement theory states that people withdraw from their normal roles as part of aging. They stop to do certain things as they go through the aging process. The activity theory says that people become more active or more involved or happier after retirement or when they hit the old age phase. And the continuity theory says that people's internal characteristics within themselves, within their personality, like their structure or their belief or their other personality traits, and their external elements or external structure, whether they are going to align or not as they reach the old age phase. This is what we mean by continuity theory. And conflict theory views aging in a different light. And there are two sub-theories under the conflict theory. The modernization theory says that people lose power or status, especially due to modernization, industrialization, and extended family is no longer the norm. And because of that, older adults in many societies, they lose their status and power when they hit a certain life phase. This is what we mean by modernization theory. Are we clear? And the age stratification theory says that age is another dimension of ranking people in a society. Age is another dimension of stratification. People are also ranked by their age groups based on their different control, access to resources. And if you pay attention, it seems that the elderly in many countries are a diverse group of people in any given place. Some elderly people, I'm sure you notice, they are CEO, board of directors, big guns of many big corporations. They are doing really well in their old age. And some elderly, they face all these challenges. So, this is a manifestation of age stratification theory. And the modernization theory could have led to ageism, all kinds of stereotypes and prejudices against the elderly group because of industrialization, urbanization, and modernization. And because of that, people assume that the elderly, they are less tech savvy, they are slow, and other negative stereotypes. Okay, symbolic interactionism theory focus on how people perceive aging as either a status or as a process through their interactions with one another. When people interact with one another, it's a bottom-up approach, right? Symbolic interactionism. When people interact with one another, they may derive commonly agreed upon meanings pertain to different aspects of aging. And under this grand theory, they are the subculture of aging theory, where people disengage and they form new patterns of interaction, and some have a sense of community. The elderly eventually becomes a subculture. They eventually become distinctively different from other members of a society. And sometimes the social pressures or political pressures or economic pressures may cause the elderly to adopt a different lifestyle, whether they like it or not. And eventually they form a subculture in a given society. And sometimes the elderly, they form their different groups when they eventually become like a subculture, like the AARP. And the selective optimization with compensation theory talks about how selection, optimization, and compensation determines whether someone is going to be successful when they hit the old age phase, or they can master the life challenges associated with that life stage. And this theory views aging as a process, not as an outcome or status. And this theory also states that people make up for lost energy or physical decline with other goals or other activities. So this is quite similar with the disengagement theory. There are some overlap with the disengagement theory and the selective optimization with consumption theory. And people are more inclined when they hit old age to save their energy for more meaningful activities. It's like they do a cost-benefit calculation. And this theory assumes that aging does not equate dependence, and people do acknowledge their personal limitations when they reach that old age phase. And you can read about transcendence from your textbooks. Okay,